If you've ever wanted to write and publish your own children's book, then be sure to stay tuned because today we're going to be talking about the illustration process and some design concepts that you should be keeping in mind when you're illustrating your children's book. Hello everyone, my name is Lynn. I'm an author, book cover designer, and the creator of the Book Launch Planner, and today we're diving deep into the world of illustrating a children's book. Hey guys, I just wanted to chime in really quickly before the video really starts. I wanted to let you know that I will be revealing the cover for my children's book as well as the title next week, May 12th. So if you want to sign up to help with the cover reveal, the link will be down in the description. And basically all you have to do if you sign up is you'll get to see the cover one day earlier before everyone else. And all I ask is that you share it on your social media pages. So again, it is linked down below. Before I jump into illustrating, I do want to let you know there is another book on writing a children's book. If you're brand new to the children's book writing process, I suggest watching that video first. It'll be up in the info cards and also linked down below. And then once you watch that video, be sure to come back here to learn all things illustrations. So this video is going to be divided into two parts. Part one is figuring out where you're going to get your illustrations from, and part two is deciding what those illustrations will look like. So first and foremost, where are your illustrations coming from? There are a bunch of different options that you can go through, but your first thought is probably to hire a professional. And that's probably the best thing that you can do because a professional, especially one that works in the children's book industry and has done children's books in the past, know what makes children's books work. So an illustration can sometimes make or break the successfulness of a children's book. And right now I am talking in particular about a picture book because of course your audience that is reading this children's book is the parents reading it to their children. So while the parents are reading the text and reading it out loud, the child is seeing the imagery, and that's what they're really soaking in as they're listening. So if the imagery isn't colorful and engaging, it can be make or break to the book. When you hire a professional, they know what works and what doesn't work, and it will also be very, very engaging and clean looking. There are a lot of different places you can find children's books illustrators. You can find them on Upwork, Fiverr, on freelancer.com, on 99 Designs, or if you have local artists in your area, say you go to Comic-Cons and you've seen artists at Comic-Cons and they have a little experience doing children's book style art, you can always reach out to them to see if they're doing commissions. One thing you definitely want to do is to compare prices, talk to a few different children's book illustrators, get a quote from them, and also compare portfolios. Make sure their portfolio looks like the style of art that you want your children's book to be. Admittedly, hiring a professional is most likely going to be pretty expensive because they're not just doing one illustration, they're illustrating a whole book, which requires a ton of work. And if you aren't someone who has ever illustrated something, you don't quite understand how much work goes into illustrating. But sometimes a very professional children's book, one-page spread can take 1 or 2 days to illustrate. So just keep that in mind when you see the prices, that they are that expensive for a reason. Sometimes you get what you pay for. Your next option is to work with a friend. So odds are you know someone who can illustrate a book, or you know someone who is like semi-professional, so you want to work with them. This means that you could get children's book illustrations for either very cheap or possibly completely free. Now while this is great, there are a few things you want to keep in mind. Not only will it be slightly awkward to possibly commit to a price you want to pay to them because it is a friend and they want to do you a favor, but they're also going to be investing a lot of time into your project, it can also be tough to work with someone you know on a personal level. So what I want you to ask yourself is, if you hire a friend to illustrate your book, ask yourself what will happen if you don't like their illustrations. Will you have a hard time giving them feedback? Because at the end of the day, while you do want maybe a cheaper route for illustrations, you still want a product that's gonna do well. And if you aren't paying them, or if you're paying very little, are they gonna be too casual about the project? You say, hey, I know you love illustrating, would you love to illustrate my children's book for me? And they could say yes, and they start doing it, but then all of a sudden they stop doing it because other things come up in life, and now you're just forever waiting for them to finish illustrating your children's book. So that's why there's a benefit of paying people, because people who get paid actually have the motivation to finish a project, whereas someone who's just doing a favor for you, that's always going to be on their back burner because it's not a priority. Another option is photo manipulation, and by this I mean if you have a children's book that is based off of photos that you have, you can actually turn those photos into cartoons. And one way you can do that is that you can upload the photo to Be Funky and choose which cartoon style you want your children's book to be. This will not only create a cartoon that is consistent, but it's also very cheap because the membership for Be Funky is very cheap. There are a few different styles there, so be sure to play around and see what works best for you. The next option is to illustrate your children's book yourself. So I personally illustrated my own children's book. It was a big learning curve. I will definitely tell you the first few illustrations I did not come out good, but then as I started to understand my style and how I wanted to work, it started going a lot faster and the images started coming out a lot better. I'm a self-taught illustrator, though I do not consider myself a professional at all. I have not really taken any classes. I just started doing it for fun. I learned by watching other illustrators and talking to other artists because I do Comic-Cons occasionally to sell my books, and I've made a few friends there where I talk to them, and I actually have been able to watch them because sometimes when artists are bored at Comic-Con, they will doodle at their booth, and I'm lucky enough to be sitting right next to them and get to watch. I've done my illustrations digitally, which means I use a drawing tablet to do so. If you're interested, I use the Harion Inspiri H950P. I apologize if I pronounced that completely wrong, but if you're interested in using this tablet, I will leave it linked down below over to Amazon. It's a relatively cheap tablet, all things considered, and it's also really great for beginners who aren't sure if they're going to enjoy drawing on a tablet and want something less expensive but also good quality. I'm gonna have another video up on YouTube very soon that kind of goes into detail more of how exactly I illustrate my children's book and how I use my tablet to do so. So be sure to subscribe to stay tuned for that. And let me know in the comments down below if you illustrate either your children's book yourself or if you've illustrated some other simpler things yourself. Let me know what your medium of choice is. Are you a digital painter, or do you prefer either drawing something on paper or painting something? Let me know in the comments down below. So now is the time where we jump into part 2 of this video, which is what will the illustrations look like. So we're really talking about style here. You need to decide what the style of your art in your children's book is going to be. Is it going to be watercolor or photorealistic or something oil painting, or will it be super cartoony or only slightly cartoony? For me, I had a hard time deciding on style because I was so new to illustrating that I didn't even know what my personal illustrating style was. So one thing I did was that I tried out a few different things, and then I narrowed it down to something that was more oil style and then something that was very basic and super cartoony. And I put it up on Patreon and I let my patrons vote, and it was a very clear vote to have something that was more oil style, less cartoony, and that made me excited because I definitely had a lot more fun doing that style. Even though it's a lot harder to do and more time consuming, I felt like the effort was shown and that the book as a whole would do better. Now, if you want to be involved with behind the scenes content like this in the future, be sure to join me over on Patreon, because whenever I can't decide on something, I let my patrons choose. The next thing to decide is whether your art is going to be digital or physical, and by that I mean, is it going to be digitally drawn or physically drawn? Most of the time you'll have the best results when something is digitally drawn. That way you don't have to transfer it over into digital because it's already there. And when something is digitally drawn, it's much easier to edit, especially when you are starting to get to the stage where you're almost published. But if you want to physically draw something or physically paint something, you can always scan it in. Sometimes you do risk the fact that it could look lower quality or that it could just look a little bit faded because it's scanned in, but you can try to do some post edits to make it a little bit brighter and look like the quality you're looking for. Next thing to decide is your color scheme. So every book will have an overarching color scheme, and I'll show you some examples on the screen as I talk. You could have a book that has a more pastel color scheme, or a cool color scheme, a warm color scheme. You could also use a lot of primary colors. Overall, your color scheme should not only fit the mood of the book, but it will hopefully make all the illustrations come together for one solid project and look like they all go together. Which brings me into the next step, continuity. So basically what I mean by this is while on every single page you're going to have a different illustrations, all those illustrations need to go together. So in my case, my cat Moon needs to look the same across all the pages of the children's book. You know, he can't look like one cat on this page and then a completely different cat on the other page. So one thing I actually do is that I've found specific features of my doodles, and I've kind of always made sure they stay the same across every single illustration. Now if you hire someone, you do not have to worry about this at all because they'll handle all of these more complicated things, but if you're trying to illustrate it yourself, you do need to keep that in mind. So that is it for all my tips regarding illustrations. If you want future videos on children's books, be sure to let me know in the comments down below. But right now I wanted to give a shout out to my patron of the week, Leslie Arambula. So Leslie has published a few poems, but she's currently working on her fantasy novel, and I'm going to read you off the blurb that she sent over to me so you can learn all about it. Wes dreams a life involved in the political system of his kingdom. He longs to gain power in order to help the people around him who have struggled for so long. And one day, when he saves some very important people from ambush, he gets shot, moving to the capital and becoming the senator's assistant. Wes must deal with the realities of city life and a political system where those in power are not concerned with anyone without it. Kiara is the lackey of a local crime boss, spending her days running errands, usually needing to brandish a dagger or two in order to complete the job. She's perfectly fine with striking fear into those older than her, using her age as another weapon in her belt, right beside intimidation and sharp tongue. When one of her only friends is murdered, Kiara isn't just conflicted by her emotions, she's now on the run because someone has pegged her as the murderer. She journeys through the country trying to unravel the true identity of the killer, stumbling upon a larger conspiracy at the same time. Both Kiara and Wes are frustrated when they run into each other on their respective journeys, but neither of them realize their fates are twined together closer than they ever could imagine. So if you want to learn more about Leslie's work in progress and Leslie as an author, I will leave her website linked down below so you can go check her out. If you want to be one of my featured patrons of the week, be sure to join me over on Patreon, where you can unlock cool and exclusive content, including podcasts, videos, and AuthorTube Academy lessons. You can also subscribe to my newsletter, and when you subscribe, you get access to free downloads and webinars. That's it for today's video. Thank you all for watching. If you'd like to learn more about writing a children's book, be sure to check out the videos over there. Otherwise, I will see you guys all next week.